So in the end, what the circuit court ruled in these patent infringement cases was sort of whoever makes it sells it. And he said, you know, Jacob Linville, John Piper, have you ever made a Phoenix column? No. Can you describe how to do it? Well, no, not really. How do you set the? They didn't. There was a blistering cross-examination of John Piper, you know, along that sort of line. So if you came to Phoenixville, just, you know, what did you tell them? And did you know how to do this? Did you know how to do that? Why were you there asking these questions? It sort of got into that. And the judge said, well, you know, I'm going to rule very narrowly. Phoenix, you get the circular one. Linville, Keystone Bridge Company, you get the octagonal one. And not only that, I'm going to say that all these other shapes are not covered by your patent. And to my mind, that was a really important decision because it opened the field. There was never again, as far as I can tell, really any important patent on a built-up wrought iron shape. It just sort of ended the debate. These guys had theirs, and there were never really any other really seriously important built-up wrought iron shapes. There were lots of wrought iron shapes that lots of people were making. And other bridge companies would say, yeah, this is the one we use. Another bridge company would say, yeah, this is the one I use. But they weren't patented. And if you really look at those companies, when they did have patents, and you looked at their patents, that's not what they're patenting. They're patenting other details, connections, and things like that, shapes of truss. But they aren't patenting columns any longer. So I think this case kind of cleared the decks of that kind of proprietary competition over the shapes of these sections. And of course, the Phoenix Iron Company, continued to be a great innovator. These are just some images from some of their catalogs of different spaces in the plant. And they continue to make Phoenix columns in huge numbers. The Keystone column, it stopped being used by 1880 or so. It maybe had a 10 or 15 year lifespan and then it faded away. Other builders went on to very standard sort of H and I type of shapes. But the column went on. And this is the production of Phoenix columns from 1872 to 1905 in tons. And you can see here, the bright green, it goes up and down with the economy. Different kinds of depressions and panics would bring building construction and bridge construction down. So some years were bigger years than others. It peaked in the the early 1880s, was sort of the peak year for Phoenix columns, which when you think about it is, over 20 years after the patent.
I didn't know that they made Phoenix columns in steel as well as wrought iron.
And they did.
I never knew that.
After they opened the open hearth furnaces here to make steel, they made steel Phoenix columns, and they made those. It continues. They made the very last one in 1919, and they were still making fair numbers almost up to the turn of the century. Wow. Almost all of them after about 1893 or 94 were going into buildings. They weren't being used in bridges anymore by that point. But architects and engineers working in buildings continue to use them. That's how strong the market was.
When did they switch to buildings?
With steel? With steel. About this time too. You begin to have steel buildings in the late 1880s and 1890s. The earliest steel bridges are in the 1870s, but they're usually not all steel bridges. There are certain ones like Eames Bridge has some steel in it, but a lot of iron as well. Brooklyn Bridge, the same thing. But in the 1890s, the open hearth process, which is really developed throughout the 1880s, is the important change in the iron making technology that makes for steel that is economical and useful in